Welcome to episode 39 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. This week it's all things Dakar with Lawrence Hacking, who in 2001 rode the last edition of the rally that covered the classic route from France to Senegal. Lawrence gives us the lowdown on the current state of the rally and an insight into what it takes to make it back home alive. But before we get into our conversation with Lawrence, a word from our sponsor. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Don't fret. It's okay because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Let's get into it. The Lowdown Show is presented by adbrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. So you're in Paris, and you're just about ready to head off. I mean, what is going through your mind? Were there moments of, and I want you to be honest here, were there moments of what have I gotten myself into, or were you really, did you feel prepared?
Be honest, I thought, yeah, I might not come back from this.
Okay, full marks for honesty.
Yeah. Well, I made out a will for the first time ever, and I told my wife when I set off that morning. It was freezing cold, January 1, Paris, France, at the underneath the. It's called the what is that place called? What is it? Anyways, it's underneath the Eiffel Tower. A lot of hoopla. The dark of the night, basically. Didn't sleep all night. Pretty wound up, I'd say. Got up, got to the start line, took the cover off the bike, started it, and rode down out of Paris. And I thought this was the big one. I thought this was. I had worked so hard for it and invested everything, and really thought I was pretty well prepared. I had a lot of confidence, maybe a little bit too much for a while there, but. I was fairly realistic. There's a careful balance between being too cocky and, it's humans are a strange animal. You never know.
I've never gotten that balance right. I'm still looking for it.
I don't know. You take the best shot, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So. I thought the bike was well prepared. It was designed just to finish, and I thought it was in pretty good shape. And although I'd never ridden a rally before, never really road book navigated, with the paper roll charts and all that. But I figured I'd work it out as I was going along, and I did. And there's if you will, you have to read the book, and you'll see the highs and lows emotionally that I went through for 21 days after that morning. I still have very clear memories of what was going on that morning.
So in terms of a nuts and bolts sense, and much of this is covered in your book, and we're going to mention your book later. And I encourage everyone, because this conversation just sort of glosses over a few highlights of that. But what do you do with like spare tires and wheels and I mean, what do you know what to pack, and where is that? Did you have support at all?
That was a really good question. So I did a lot of research, and my wife is fortunately from France, so I spent some time that summer, and I asked everybody I knew who knew something about Dakar, but from a privateer's perspective. Okay, how many chains would you need? How many brake pads? How many tires? What do you eat? And I asked all sorts of people that I could find in France that actually had real world experience in the Dakar, what they did. And I asked the organizers, what puts people out? Why do people not finish? Because the finishing rate is very low among first timers, rookies. So I asked all those questions, and I have, prior to that, I had a lot of experience doing endurance motorcycle races, events like the ISDE. I'd done that 5 times before. So that's pretty good basis for, doing events and preparing, and to me, anticipation is everything. So preparation is half the fun of doing these things, is, running everything over through your mind, all the scenarios. What do I need? Okay, where am I going to be sleeping? Asking all those questions, and, knowing myself what I need to eat in the morning to have enough energy to last the whole day doing, physical activity and stuff. So yeah, I accumulated a lot of knowledge from my own background and as much as I could from other people.
Now, you and I rode together briefly years and years ago, and I can tell people listening or watching this that you are an exceptionally capable rider. I would say a very natural rider.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
thanks. Yeah,
and
thanks.
so you know, you're not some amateur thrasher. You've got your shit together. And yet, I would assume that entering a race like this, you know, you're not going to battle the factory guys for the win.
For sure. Yeah.
You understand that.
Oh yeah.
So how does a mindset, are you riding at 80%? I mean, did you always have something in reserve? Because of course, if you break an arm, it's all over, and you've spent a year getting ready for this.
Yeah.
How do you pace yourself in something like this?
Well, that's yeah, another good point. I've raced for many years, so up until this year I don't know how many 30 years of actual motorcycle competition prior to going to the Dakar. If you add it all up, there's a lot of and wide variety of racing. Motocross and ice racing and enduros and hare scrambles and all that kind of stuff. Road racing even. So I've got had a lot of past experience doing a variety of things, and yeah, you can extrapolate little things. You can draw little bits of experience from other types of racing to apply to something new. So yeah, remind me what we're
Well, in terms of how you pace yourself, did you always
based.
have something in reserve?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can't. There's just no way you can get away with riding um, so close to the limit in those conditions because you're supposed to be reading the road book and there's cautions, like they're explained in a road book with different 1, 2, or 3 exclamation marks. But I prefer to ride what I can see and make my own decisions because you never know if the road book is accurate. You never know if your odometer's you're supposed to read the odometer, then the road book, and then look in the ground and say, oh, if there's a caution, I better slow down, and you've gone by it 200 meters past it. So you got to be so careful.
Right.
But yeah, to pace yourself, I learned a lot about pacing myself riding hare scrambles because, you can kind of get up to a certain speed and you have to go fairly close to as fast as you can go. And it still lasts 2.5 hours. And there's a real art to that. So, and you have to be in good shape. I think that was one of my strongest attributes is to have pretty good physical condition in 2001 when I worked so hard to get ready. And I'd always been training for the 6 days and knew how to get in good shape. Yeah. So it's key to know how to, everybody has a finite amount of energy. You have to expend it very sparingly to know how to finish, say, a full day of riding and ride. There's techniques of riding where you're not wasting as much energy or being very efficient on a motorcycle, which I think I have the ability to do that as well.
But still, like, for instance, if you watch say MotoGP, during some of the test sessions, a rider will go out and they will do pretty much the race distance. They'll do their 22 laps, so they can see how the tire wears.
Mm-hmm.
But in something like in what you did in Paris-Dakar, I mean, you can't go out and ride for 21 days in a row through those conditions to prepare. So there really is no way to totally get ready for it, is there?
It's experience. Yeah. It's not, yeah, well, for sure you're jumping into the deep end when you do the Dakar. I mean, since then I've done quite a few different rallies and, all that experience is in the hard drive and I can draw upon it whenever I need to. And then you factor in my age, which is, older now. So, I'm always thinking about that. What can I do? Being efficient with energy and the ability to do work for a certain amount of time, especially when you add up the days. And like you say about staying injury free was really key too, because you hear a lot of people that, fall off and, have some sort of minor injury that slowly plays a part in long-term, events. You have to really, the key is to stay healthy, not get sick. I mean, you can easily get sick in a 21-day period. Get chilled and that, from sweating and working hard and then riding up in the mountains or getting out on a road. and getting chilled, and then you wake up in the morning with a, some sort of, upper respiratory infection or something like that. That's super easy to do. I learned a lot about that kind of thing, staying healthy for a long period of time, especially before the event, getting ready, is not overtraining from the 6 days, because I would say I tried pretty hard riding the 5-6 days that I did over the throughout. I first went in 1985, 86, and then 90, 91, 92, and then spent a lot of time between 92 and 2001 riding enduros and hare scrambles. So knowing your body is very important to you.
Well, we're having this conversation almost coming up in 25 years after you did it. So obviously you survived it.
Yeah.
What was that experience like when you finally made it there? I mean, it must have, I can't imagine how overwhelmingly relieved you must have been, for one, but I mean, just take us through maybe a couple of the highlights of your Paris-Dakar, and then that feeling of making it.
Yeah. First of all, mine wasn't easy. I went through a lot of times, a number of times I really thought it was over. The bike quit almost at the end of it. I think day 17 of 21. It was all my fault. I accept, everything's, the buck stops with me. And then of course you get to Dakar. I remember, I think I was in a town called Tambacounda or somewhere way down in Senegal somewhere. And I actually called my wife because she had plane tickets to fly from Toronto to Paris down to Dakar to be at the finish if I was going to finish. And so we had these, flexible plane tickets, and I called her from Tambacounda and I said, I think I'm going to make it there. And so she flew all that way and got to Dakar in the dark of the night, which is something you don't want to do for a young woman. And she
Right.
got to the hotel and just sat in the lobby. And I had a hotel room, but when I got there, in Dakar, and this really nice, the one nice hotel there is, I wasn't able to secure a hotel room because I didn't have reservations, because the delay in booking the rooms. By the time the information got to Canada, I was too late. So I was planning to set up my tent on the front lawn. And then the guy at front desk said, just come back after 6, because a lot of people don't finish the Dakar. They have hotel room reservations, but they're not there. So I got a hotel room, and then waited and waited. And then every once in a while, looked down in the lobby, down in the center of the hotel, and she was sitting there, and went down and she got there. So the next day, rode the last short stage into a place called Lac Rose, which is the Pink Lake, and you ride up on the podium. And I remember doing that. She's on the back, and
Wow,
we shared that moment. And I remember I was crossing. There's a short stage along the Atlantic coast, and there's a group photo with Hubert Auriol, the event director, and everybody's there. All the bike riders. They lay out a nice little breakfast. You ride down the beach, and then you turn into the dunes, and then come back inland a little bit and ride up on the podium. I remember the last little bit, I was slowing down. I said, I don't want this to be over. It's one of the biggest emotional highs I've ever had in my life. I think the only other one, and you'll know this, is when your kids are born.
yes.
And it's very, very similar. It's a very powerful feeling. I'm not familiar with anything that's stronger feeling than that, and makes you want to try and recapture that feeling. It's so powerful.
For our 7th inning stretch, some words provided by our sponsor. Picture this: you're in the garage, your favorite room outside of your house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts that you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease. And because you're committed to riding that thing further than the odometer can even handle, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? I could probably use some new brakes, a shock, perhaps. This baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find any part you need there. It's unreal, from headlights to air filters to exhaust systems, all the way to those carbon fiber rims you've been fantasizing about. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. Because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major and mods are always intense. So you need to know those parts are guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in, wrench first. And on the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. You know what you love more than anything, and that is, of course, riding your bike. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance and locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay. Minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road. So eBay created Guaranteed Fit. All you have to do is add your ride's info to get the exact parts that fit. When you see a green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. So now that you know all of this, just imagine standing at that open garage door, looking at the bike you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible, whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Now back to my conversation with Lawrence Hacking. The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. So now that we've established your bona fides, Lawrence, and talking about Dakar, it's kind of interesting, the arc of it as an event. I've got a few statistics here, and started in 1977. And this, you'll appreciate this. This is the Wikipedia comment on Paris-Dakar. It says, quote, rough terrain, driver fatigue, and lack of skill results in accidents and serious injuries.
Yeah.
So lack of skill. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my. So it started in 1977 after Thierry Sabine got lost in the Tenerife desert while doing another rally.
Yeah.
And thought, oh, this is a good place for a rally. So that was the sort of the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And then in 1988, I'm just glossing over a few things. There were 603 starters.
Yeah.
It dipped down to 153 in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1997, it was exclusively in Africa. And then in 1998, back to Paris-Dakar. And then 2001, your year.
Yeah.
Last year of Paris-Dakar, and thus far it hasn't gone back to that because of the geopolitical situation, of course. And now you watch it keenly, and to me, as a very casual observer, it doesn't have the same aura. Now that's not to diminish the skill or the effort in any way.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of the Paris-Dakar rally was the sheer distance, and you say Paris and Dakar, Senegal, and you just envision a lot of hell between the 2 points. Yeah. Whereas if it's all in one country, and then of course it migrated in 2009 to South America, and where is it now? It is
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Thank you. So what has that? Here's my question: what has that done to the rally? The fact that it's no longer the original route.
First of all, I can remember it's changed every single year. It's always under a state of evolution, and
so just to clarify, even the Paris-Dakar version wasn't the same route.
It's always changing, always changed as far as I know. I mean, the original few routes, went from Paris to Dakar, and then and I think in '92 it went all the way to Cape Town, and there's one where it went to Dakar and then back to Paris. So
I read that, like, that's not enough just to get there. You got to go back.
Oh yeah, and the year, and then it started changing different start points. Like I think it went from it was started in Lisbon once or twice, Arras, France, different locations. So you have to remember a couple of things about the Dakar. Is first of all, it's owned by a company called ASO, and it's a for-profit entity. And, when it went to South America, for example, those countries paid millions of dollars to host that event. And the reason is that it has such worldwide exposure and interest that it actually is like selling the idea of going to Argentina or Chile to the rest of the world, because it shows these, on television or videos, it shows these beautiful landscapes and all the nice people, and it's a marketing effort for the host country and the host cities. So that's why it changed locations and destinations and routes. And in Africa, there was actually a bunch of different reasons why they would select different overnight stops. So generally speaking, it would go in Africa to an airport, because a lot of the support that went, the whole Dakar would go from airport to airport and would leapfrog over. So one day it would be end up in Ouarzazate, Morocco, and then the crew would have flown over to the next one already and set up their tents, their catering facilities, and then the trucks would, with all the material to set all this stuff up, would go on the road and leapfrog ahead of the rally to support 2,000 or 3,000 people. And so there's a bunch of it was always in change, and they tried to, I believe that the people who laid out the route had the task of challenging all the different types and levels of competitors, the cars, the factory cars, and the trucks and the bikes, and to make it a really good, valid competition wasn't easy. So there was there's experienced navigators that knew the tracks already, and they had the previous year's road books. So to make it a good challenge, the route is always secret up until the day before you go from one location to another. It's an undisclosed route. So in order to keep everything fair, they wanted to try different routes and make it so that the experienced navigators versus the less experienced navigators could still find a way and not find shortcuts and things like that, and keep it a valid competition. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things in play as far as making the Dakar what it is. I believe now the people who do it are very, very experienced and very knowledgeable on how to make that event fair and competitive, and not and keep it really a serious challenge. And also they have to have good support, medical support and logistics support. And it's evolved in a way that came from, when I did it, there was, for example, you got to a bivouac at night and there was no washrooms, no showers. You're basically just sleeping in a rocky plain on the edge of a one tarmac runway in the middle of the Sahara Desert.
That sounds romantic.
Yeah, that's what you pay for. But now I went back in 2010 to South America, and there's VIP tents and umbrella girls, and the top drivers are sleeping in luxury hotel rooms and get driven back and forth to the race. And there's pretty girls walking around, and showers and wood floors in the catering tents, and all beautiful food and all that stuff. And the reason it evolved in that direction is because they needed entries, and a lot of people, more recent newcomers to the rally, weren't ready to not have washrooms and showers. So now it's and they put things in place nowadays to have to recapture that old style of sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag, to give the current competitors a feeling what it was like, where the Dakar came from. They have these marathon stages now where it's getting more complicated, but what they do is they have these marathon stages in Saudi where they're driving or riding along, and then at 5 o'clock, just before dark, you have to stop at the they'll stop you, and they hand you a tent and a little meal kit, and you have to stay there the night and then go again the next day. So it's pretty cool in that way. They are still trying to recapture the flavor of it, only for 1 or 2 nights, but at least people are reminded of what it was like when I started. I knew guys who did the very first Dakar, and one story was that there was no catering, there was no food, and the motorcycle guys were riding along very, very hungry, and they found a bushman who had killed a deer, and they bought it from him and roasted it over a spit, and ate it and continued on their way. So that's what built the reputation of the Dakar, is those stories like that. And of course the danger, there's all sorts of stories of people getting lost in the desert in a sandstorm or something, or running out of fuel. And I knew one of the Sonoto team support trucks was lost for a few days, and they were found. They were out of water, and they got located, and then showed up at the bivouac a few days later and told them, "Okay, you can stop looking for us now. We're here." And they said, "What? We didn't know you were missing." So it really was life and death in the early days. It's crazy, but that's the way it was. Now, of course, there's beacons on the back of your bike. If you tip over, someone talks to you they're sitting in Paris or London or somewhere, and they say, "Are you okay?" So it's very different.
I hope I'm not going to call you an old guy. I hope, but I'm hoping as an experienced rider, when you saw the setup of the luxury catering, that you said, "Well, back in my day."
Yeah.
But do you think that, and not to wax too poetic about the old days, because there were lots of shitty things about when you did it.
Sure.
And we can look at any aspect of any of our lives, and it's easy to romance about things. But do you think that there's a sort of a level of beautiful insanity that is lost in the current version because it is that much slicker in a sense? Or is it the same? Is it the same madness?
It is it's still madness. Yeah. It's still the Dakar Rally in my mind. And, I know guys who are going to be on the start line in 2 weeks, and it's very challenging. It's different, in a way, they set up the courses differently. There's still a real element of danger. The guys who are trying to win are in a different league than the average guy that are just like me, that entered and are trying to finish, which is the key, at least for your first one, is to try and get to the finish line, because that's what you remember the most. I often have said, it's far easier to put up with 2 or 3 weeks of hardship than a lifetime of disappointment.
Right.
And so it is still not easy to finish. It's all the human side of it. Can you handle the pressure, the stress of trying to stay focused for, well, this year would be 14 days or 14 stages. Ride 500 kilometers. Some people are maintaining their own bikes. Most of the entrants in the bike class have, I'd say, a support team behind them. So they step off the bike and hand it to a mechanic, and they go and get cleaned up. They might be sleeping in a motor home and have a nice hot shower, have a fridge full of snacks and things like that. That's pretty common now.
Right.
There are people in what they call the Male Moto class, which is it was called Male Moto or original class, which is a class that has rules where the rider is the only person who can work on the bike during the whole rally. So that's essentially recreating how I did it in 2001. But in 2001, most of the bike riders didn't have support. They were on it on their own, or having limited support where their mechanic flew in 2 or 3 times during the rally or something like that. But nowadays they have a class that's designated, and they have what they would call a parc fermé, where those riders go into that parc fermé. They have a trunk, which is called a mallet in French, a malle, and it's a metal box. I have mine downstairs, and that's where you put all of the stuff you can carry in that box. And you have that and 2 spare wheels, and that's what you have to finish the Dakar on it. And you are the only person who can work on that bike. So if you need your fork seals replaced, you have to pull them out and pull them apart inside the parc fermé and do all the work yourself and put it all back together and put them back on your bike. And it's all supervised. So that's kind of an interesting side note. And I think there's a couple of guys that I know in that class this year. And it's a lot of the top guys come over and watch what these guys are doing, because obviously during the Dakar, you have to ride 10, 12 hours a day, and then you've got to take care of yourself, feed yourself, maintain that bike, and then sleep, and then get up in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, and do it all over again for a number of days in a row. So keeping that all together is very, very difficult. It's quite a bit easier if you have a support team that, there's a rental package where they will take care of everything for you. You retire to your motorhome, have a nice sleep. If it's raining, which it can do, If it's cold, you have a nice sleep, and then you get up, you have good food, and then off you go again. And that to me is quite a bit easier than the way I did it, I would say. I'd love to go back and do it like that, but it's all about the cost and things like that as well.
One thing that always, in terms of motorcycling, has always fascinated me are the skills of the elite riders. Now, as I said before, you're an exceptionally capable rider, far better than most of us, far better.
Thank you.
And yet, you know, and I know that those ones at the very top are really something else. And I did a little off-road thing at the Erzberg Roadie one year, trying to follow, I think he was 5-time Dakar winner, Cyril Dupree.
Yeah.
Who was just doing things on a motorcycle and he was just playing. He wasn't even working.
Yeah.
And he was just doing stuff up terrain that I could hardly believe. And here's my question to you. How good are those good guys, and how hard are they going, and how do they survive at the speeds that they go?
Yeah, those guys are very, very good. They have exceptional skills, I think. They're very brave. They, I think in the Dakar, there's a lot of pressure for those guys to win or to do well, and there would probably be on a bonus system where they probably don't make a ton of money, but they get paid to win, and they get paid a lot of money. So you can imagine the pressure for them to try, and they take risks. And you see, some of those on the videos, how fast they're going and what happens when they make a miscalculation and crash. I mean, it's super serious. I honestly, I've been around for so long, and the reason I've been around for so long is I think that I am able to mitigate the risk to an acceptable level for me. And it's been half a century, 53 years of racing and taking risks, but in a calculated manner. Those guys, I think, are able to calculate the risk at a level that's very different than what I would do, and they accept that calculation and take the risk anyways. I think they're skilled athletes as well. It's all about anticipation. They have very, very good motorcycles that are well set up, and that when they're not well set up, you can see what happens as well. They have factory prepared motorcycles that are designed to go with that speeds and hit those G outs, and they're exceptionally good riders that have a ton of experience doing it. I mean, it takes a lot of experience just to even come close to placing in the top 10 or top 20 even. It's not, and I think speed is a bit of a factor now. There's a saying in rally that is you can ride faster than you can navigate. And the strategy involved in the Dakar at that level is very, plays a large part on the outcome. And those guys calculate the wins. They reverse engineer the wins from the where they want to be at the end of the rally, not at the beginning. So they understand.
So they'll calculate a time for a section, and this is what we need to do it in.
Yeah. So what they do is, the conditions are laid out ahead of time, so they know the distance each day and the types of conditions, and with their experience, they can predict what to expect, and they know their competition as well, who's fast in those conditions. So you don't want to win every stage every day, because basically the way it works is the guy who wins starts first the next day, and he has to do all the navigating ahead of everybody else. And it's far easier to navigate when there's a couple of tracks in the sand and the dunes and things like that, where the guy in the lead has to look down. And traditionally, if you start 6th, 7th, 8th, and there's a separation between when you start, so it might be 1 or 2 or 3 minutes between each rider. So, but the first guy has to do the opening the course, they call it, and that's a much more of a challenge navigational wise than the guy who starts 6th, 7th, 8th, who has a few different tracks to kind of give them a clue of what's going on. And so what you try and do is try and not lose too much time during the rally. Like always, it's easier to try and win the race towards the end of the rally by starting mid in the top 10 or so, and trying to use the guy's dust ahead of him. So if you can see the dust cloud ahead, you can basically do the navigation, but not have to look down as much and ride what you can see and follow the tracks a little bit. And they've tried all sorts of different things to try and eliminate that advantage and try and get people to compete more to try and win each stage rather than hold back and just follow the tracks. And that's always been like that in the Dakar. There's all sorts of little strategies involved in rallying. There's guys that are really good navigators, and there's guys in the old days that aren't so good. So there's a lot of guys that have made a career out of following other riders, and it's kind of a tricky little game to play. And there's stories where a guy would pretend to stop and have a leak, and let the guy who can't navigate go by him and get lost, and then go the right way. And actually, I've done that myself.
Oh, really? So you faked something to stop, and then
yeah. In Mongolia, I rode the rally in Mongolia a couple of times, 3 times. I was in Cycle Canada a few times. I was riding a 250 in that the first time I went in 2005, and there's a couple other Mongolian guys, and there was one guy I knew. I watched the results, and I knew that we were competing for the win. And we got to a fork in the road, and I watched him go off the wrong way, and I stopped, and I was riding with a Japanese guy, and he said, "Oh, I think we go here." And I said, "Shh, just hang on a sec. I have to go to the washroom." We watched him go off in the distance, and then we took the right way. And I fortunately won the class. So, as a result of that, but that's what you do, because anyways.
And to this day, that other rider is sticking pins in an effigy of Lawrence.
That's my lower back pain.
For doing that. Well, we're just about to the 2025 version of Dakar, and once again taking place in Saudi Arabia. I understand.
Yeah.
And what's a preview? Who has, first of all, has KTM's financial situation affected their support of riders that you're aware of?
I think so. Yeah. They let go of. They didn't renew the contract of Toby Price and Sam Sunderland in the summer, which was, I kind of thought that Toby was kind of done his motorcycle career already, and Sam's been around a while, and they both had serious crashes. And I think they were probably the highest paid rally riders they had on their roster. They have a few more guys. There's Daniel Sanders, who went from Gas now to KTM, and he's probably the fastest guy. But I don't think that he costs them a lot of money. There'll be a big bonus for him to win, but I don't think his personal contract isn't very, very much. But still to get a factory truck and personnel down there is still a huge expense. But it is a great marketing tool for them. I mean, they've been selling KTM. Well, I think actually 2001, when I was in that Dakar, was the first year KTM won with Fabrizio Mioni. And they won, I think, 20 some years straight after that. So they've marketed a lot of motorcycles based on those wins. But prediction wise, there's some good teams in there, good riders. Honda's got a good, strong team now. They've kind of stepped in with Van Beveren and the American guy, Skylar Howes, who is due for a win. Van Beveren, I think he won already once. And then I think they've got a couple other guys. They've got the Cove A bikes with a couple of guys on there. Mason Klein I think he might be a privateer on a Cove A, which is a young American guy who can go fast. And then they've got the Hero team with Ross Branch, who won last year. So it's going to be a good competition. I looked at the entry list, and it looks like there's a lot of the typical names in the top 20 will be there. The Sherco's got a pretty good team too. They've got 3 strong riders, and I guess that's about it. A lot of privateer guys. And
I was going to ask you about that. So there still is the privateers are still doing the race.
Oh, sure, yeah. Jordan, there's a Canadian guy for the first time in many years there, Jordan Strachan, and he's a good young. I think he's 31 or 32 years old. I spoke with him in the summer. He got a hold of me, and I gave him the wise guy tips and how to get to the finish line, because that's what I said. the same line. Like, just make sure you get to the finish line every day and enjoy every minute, because it might be the only time he gets to go. It's probably, I'm going to guess, $100,000 maybe to get there. He's on a Cove. He bought the bike, and they've helped him out. And I know the Baja Rally helped him out. He was in the Baja Rally, I think that's in October. A bunch of friends of mine were down there, and Jordan won the Mallee Moto class in that rally. So he's a big, strong guy from Alberta, very experienced rider, and I think he has a good chance at finishing. Hopefully his bike won't let him down, and you know, he rides accordingly. Like, you know, you got to ride with the, you know, like you asked. I think, you know, if he rode at 80%, 75, 80%, he should be able to get to the finish line without, you know, without too much problem. I don't know the bikes that well, but you know, they should, as long as he's, you know, doesn't make any big mistakes or break something that you can't keep going, you know, put him out for, you know, you can't lose time. You got to always accumulate time, keep it in hand, you know, in case you have a problem at night. You've got to, you know, spend some extra time. It's better to get the day finished with it in the light, preferably, and then start working on your bike and get ready for the next day. You have to stay focused on that. There's no time to socialize or you know, just get down to business 2 weeks in a row, and then you know, ride with a lot of, I would say, a lot in hand. You know, don't take any, minimize the risk you're going to take. Basically, keep the bike in place, intact is the key to get to the finish line.
The specification for the motorcycles has changed a lot over the years too. You had a 650 Honda,
Yeah,
and of course there were all the big twins. I think of the you know, the Cagiva Elephant, which had a 900 Ducati V twin in it, and now they're 450 singles. And because 450 is sort of this, you know, the standard sort of dirt bike size in the modern age, how close are the bikes that will do the rally to what you can buy? I mean, what are the differences?
Yeah, you can build a rally bike out of a 450 Honda or Yamaha, you know, CRF 450X. In fact, there's guys in there with a privateer built bikes or a 450 Yamaha. There's companies that sell kits that you can, you know, buy and build your own bike. It's a good way to do it. So that, you know, the factory bikes are quite a bit different. I think there's probably rules in place where I think there's rules in place where they get penalized if they change an engine. And as I said, everything changes every year. You know, the reason that the 450s were put in place is because they were trying to keep the speeds down, because, you know, those great big twins that they were racing in Africa, they'd go 160 Ks an hour. But the courses were different too. What they've done is they make the course less fast. And so it's a little bit more enduro-like, where the big long straights in a lot of cases have been eliminated, so that you don't go 160 kilometers an hour for as long. In the early days, it was just, you know, there was the route wasn't really defined super clearly. It was, you got to get from this point to the next point, and it was a little bit vague how to get there. People took the path of least resistance down a two-track dirt road, and the assistants went down the same course and things like that. So in these days, in an effort to keep, there's a couple of reasons why they went to 450. Keep the speeds down. I don't know if that, you know, their bikes are probably just as fast or faster, and to bring more manufacturers into the fold, because you know, every dirt bike manufacturer has a 450. And that worked well. I mean, you see a company like Sherco has a 450 rally bike that they've built out of their 450 enduro bike, and, you know, Heroes in it, and Cove and things like that. So that's actually healthy for the sport, because the more manufacturers that get in, hire more riders, invest more, and make it more accessible for riders. And I'm not sure if it made it any safer, because it's all about, you know, how fast the riders are, what kind of risks they're willing to take, and the course, if there's a lot of dangers. And of course, the author of the road book is key to keep people safe as well, because you know, if you do it properly, the art of rallying is reading that road book and navigating. I mean, all the all of the hazards, the dangerous parts are supposed to be indicated in the road book. And when you see someone crash, the first thing they do is look at where he was as in a road book, and was that hazard indicated in the road book, because that's how you stay safe. Is it's a secret course, like I said, so you can't go and pre-run and memorize everything. You have to deal with everything as it comes towards you and passes under your wheels, and then move on to the next indication in the road book, and make all these navigational decisions that are supposed to slow everybody down. And generally in a percentage, kind of in a percentage basis. I think that's the way it works. The less time that they're spent at high speeds, the more safer it should be, I guess. And then, of course, the backup you've got nowadays is, I think, even when I did it, they said that if you crashed, you had a quicker medical response in the Dakar than you did in Paris, France. So that's what he said. I know that the medical support was very, very good there, and that's one of why the entry fee is so much money, is because you're paying for that peace of mind, I guess. And all rallies are like that. The medical support is a huge costly expense to the organizer, and that's why they have a real race on their hands, not just a tour.
Lawrence, you've had a long career as a journalist. You've worked for motorcycle companies in various capacities. Would you say your participation in Dakar in 2001, is it sort of the central part of your motorcycling career, would you say?
I'd have to say, yeah, it was definitely a pivotal point in my career. I question that at my age now a lot. Like, I went down this path. I started riding when I was 13 years old, so that's like 56 years ago or something like that. It's a lot of riding. It's a lot, and I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that came my way, and the ability to enjoy a really interesting life, meet a lot of interesting people, not only in motorcycling but outside, and I chose this path. So the Dakar, when I finished that, it really changed and opened up a lot of doors for me personally, as far as that goes. For the past 20 some years, I've really haven't stopped doing interesting things, and competed in all sorts of places all over the world, and I'm really grateful and appreciative of the opportunities that came my way. So yeah, I guess you'd have to say it was the pinnacle of what I got to do. It's the whole career, like everything I was able to do, I'm thankful for sure.
For the full story behind Lawrence's Dakar experience, pick up a copy of his book, To Dakar and Back, available from, where else? Amazon. In closing, words provided by our sponsor. Picture this: you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Don't fret, it's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.